We are joined with the man himself, John Kiriakou. John
Good morning.
Kiriakou, always appreciate talking to you. How you doing, John? You doing all right?
I'm okay, thanks. I don't know how you
Thank you
get
for.
up at these ungodly early hours, though.
I
Gotta
am
have the
sorry. I do this.
quadruple espresso.
I'm sorry. I always have my coffee sitting here with me. John Kiriakou, former CIA officer. John, what are you doing? Are you still doing those events around Europe?
Yeah, I am doing a 100 event around the world speaking tour. Heading out again in another week on the second leg. We did Ireland and Northern England. Going back to Northern England and Scotland for this leg.
Oh, that's so
Then,
cool.
we're going to finish England in a month. Then Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the US, continental Europe, the Persian Gulf, and we're going to finish off with 4 dates in East Asia.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
It's really great.
That is awesome. Australia, the seafood is so good. It's so good.
It's amazing.
Try kangaroo if you get the chance.
I've had kangaroo. I like it. It's a little bit stringy, but it's actually good. And I'll tell you something funny about the seafood in Australia.
It is a weird taste.
Australia was a penal colony, of course. It was an English penal colony. And so the British, when they shipped prisoners in the early 19th century, they also shipped loads and loads of salted beef, cured salted beef.
Yeah.
And because it was very English to eat beef, and it came all the way from England. And so the prisoners were given fresh seafood, lobster, crab, fish, shellfish, thinking that was what the low quality, low class people ate. So the British sickened themselves on, year-old salted beef while the prisoners got to eat the fresh seafood.
Wow. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
The clams, calamari. Oh God, this stuff is good. Thank you for joining me. And the reason why I brought you on, I was interested in the negotiations that are taking place between Trump and Iran. I have two minds of this, and I have a difficult time melding my two minds. One of the comments is like, he agrees with everybody. It's like, dude, I don't agree with everybody. It just needs to be logically consistent because I don't know which one it is. To give context, Wesley Clark, and I'm pretty sure you're aware of the taking down all of these governments, Iran being the last one, head of the snake, blah, blah, blah. Iran is the last one. Every other government has fundamentally been destroyed. Well, Afghanistan and Iraq are still there, but for the most part, they are not entirely independent.
Mm-hmm.
They've asked the U.S. to leave for God knows how many years, and the U.S. has said no. So there's independence for you. But Iran is the last independent actor in this process. Trump is talking about unilaterally attacking Iran. Iran did nothing to us. They're no threat to us, but unilaterally attacking Iran. And they've engaged in negotiations. Now, of course, Trump blew away the first JCPOA. He sends Witkoff. He sidelines the State Department. And so I look at them and think to myself, okay, well, despite this threat that's running through the presidencies and the administrations, he's sending a realist. He's not sending an ideologue. Otherwise, you send Rubio or you send, some other whack job. By the same token, there's a document that Brian Beletic put up, this called Path to Persia. And in the document, they point out these war plans. They point out one of the ways to deal with Iran is to effectively negotiate with them as if we're doing it for real while having Israel to attack, with the notion that we could say, well, we were negotiating in good faith. It is Israel that's doing that, not us. Give me your take on that. And the reason why I bring this up, when I had the conversation with Michael Maloof yesterday, Maloof was like, yeah, they come up with these plans all the time. And as I pointed out to him, Project for a New American Century was being carried out with the Bush administration. And it was being carried out using the people who were, let's say, not entirely aware that they were doing this. They were just doing their jobs, while a larger framework was taking place of them literally destroying a country and destroying the Middle East. You've been in the CIA. You've been behind the scenes on this stuff, which is the reason why I wanted to bring you in. Give me a take on that. When you're looking at these negotiations, do you see these negotiations as being legitimate? Do you think they are a stalking horse for something, let's say, subversive? Give me your thoughts.
This is an incredibly complicated issue. First of all, let me comment on the document that you just had up on the screen. That was written by Dr. Ken Pollack. Ken is one of the foremost experts on Iran that exists in America. We were junior analysts together at the CIA 35 years ago.
Were you?
Yeah, and he left the CIA to go to Harvard to get his PhD, which he did, was immediately gobbled up by the think tanks, and then has taught on and off at the National War College ever since. He knows of what he speaks. With that said, like you, I'm talking to a lot of people on this issue, people who know more than I do.
Right.
And I'm getting a pretty consistent message. I spoke earlier this week with a relatively junior member of the Iranian negotiating team. And what he said was that the Iranians have been utterly taken aback by the seriousness and at the same time the flexibility of Steve Wyckoff.
Mm-hmm.
He has so far been only reasonable. The American position seems to have officially changed in that the Americans are not demanding that the Iranians not develop a delivery system, which has been the sticking point in the past. The Iranians, let's say the Iranians had a bomb, which they don't. They don't even want a bomb, according to 4 consecutive national intelligence estimates released by the U.S. intelligence community and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. But just for the sake of an argument, let's say that they have a bomb.
Yeah.
They don't have a system with which to deliver it to Israel. They don't have a missile that can carry a nuclear bomb that they could fire at Israel. And so the U.S. position has long been in these negotiations that they cannot develop a missile system. They cannot. And we've given up that position just in the last week. There was no announcement. There was no analysis. You can't turn on the news and see what they're saying about the U.S. now dropping its demand. But it happened in the negotiations. I think that we would get a better indication of the direction of these talks by listening to the statements made by the Iranian foreign minister when they come out of the talks. Right. And the Iranian foreign minister has been like, oh my God, I can't believe this is going so well. The Americans have been perfectly reasonable, and we're looking forward to the 3rd round of talks, which are coming up soon. Now, keep that in mind at the same time as what everybody knows, that Donald Trump is obsessed with winning the Nobel Peace Prize. He thought he was going to get it with the North Koreans 8 years ago, and that didn't happen. But he hates the fact that Barack Obama has a Nobel Peace Prize, and Barack Obama did nothing to get it. If anything, Barack Obama should get the anti-Nobel Peace Prize because he killed more people with drones than any other president in American history.
It was because of Bush. It was a repudiation of Bush. That's all.
That's all it was. But that stings for a lot of Republicans, and especially for Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So I think very cautiously, and remember, we are in an incredibly early phase of these talks. You remember the famous story during the Vietnam War where the first several rounds of talks at the Paris peace talks between the Americans and the North Vietnamese was over the shape of the negotiating table.
Right? Oh, really? I didn't know that. Are you serious?
Yeah, they argued for weeks. Yeah, they argued for weeks over the shape of the table to carry out the negotiations because the North Koreans were winning, so they didn't need to get to the table and negotiate peace. They were killing Americans every single day. Well, the Iranians have been fighting us for 46 years now. And so they would like an agreement. They don't really need an agreement. But what they want is for us to keep the Israelis off their backs. Okay, point 2. I'm very close to somebody who happens to be Iranian. Mm-hmm. And she goes to Iran regularly. And she's a pretty skilled political analyst in her own right. And she has been maintaining consistently that the Iranians have adapted so well to sanctions that they've gotten themselves to a point where they lack for literally nothing. What the stuff that they really, really need, they get from the Russians, the Chinese, and the Indians. And the stuff that the Russians and the Chinese and the Indians can't provide, they manufacture themselves. And so they don't need to have sanctions lifted. It would be nice because it would lead to outside investment. I say outside meaning Western European, possibly even American. But the sanctions just don't have a bite anymore. Certainly the sanctions haven't stopped them from enriching uranium.
Right.
And so that tells me that while the Iranians don't need an agreement would be nice because it would serve to keep the Israelis at bay and get the Americans off their backs, right? So I'm cautiously optimistic. Again, this is a very early stage. We're still in the preliminary discussions, but I think this is a very good thing. And I'll make another point too. You know, it's so easy to criticize Donald Trump and say he's a dope and he doesn't understand these complicated issues. I don't think that's it at all. I think Donald Trump's a lot smarter than people give him credit for being. And he understands that Iran is a very big country with a whole lot of people. And they have had 46 years to learn to protect their military and nuclear installations. And they are deep underground to the point where this Iranian contact of mine told me that they don't fear American or Israeli bunker buster bombs. They just don't fear them. They're so deep, only a nuke could do some damage to them. And do the Israelis really have the guts to drop a nuclear weapon?
Oh, that's the rub, right? I mean, even in the New York Times, when they were talking about it from the context of Israel attacking, with the U.S. supporting whatever attack they came up with.
Well, you notice that when Benjamin Netanyahu was here 2 weeks ago, it was a Saturday that he met with Trump, and he came with some immediacy because he knew that Trump was going to propose these talks. Okay? So you notice when he came out of the Oval Office, there was no press conference. Well, a press conference was scheduled, and Trump canceled it because he didn't want Netanyahu to bitch about the Americans turning on Israel and advocating talks with Iran. So that leads me to believe that Trump is actually serious about this.
Do you think Iran would do this on their own?
No.
I mean, I'm sorry, Israel would do this on their own.
Trump. Attack?
Yeah.
No. And I say no because, and I'm confident in that answer, because in all my years at the CIA and later on at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Benjamin Netanyahu asked every single president to attack Iran. And I mean George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, and all of them said no. And so the Israelis didn't go it alone.
So Trump has an instinct. Like, he can hit Yemen because he's not entirely concerned about Yemen.
Yeah, they killed 74 people in one strike last week. They don't care.
Mostly civilians. All of them might have been civilians for all I know.
Right.
Iran is a different animal, though. And I suspect that what the White House knows is, okay, there's an unpredictability about consequences of that strike when they respond in whatever strike you do.
See, this is an important point you're making.
Yeah.
The United States always underestimates blowback. Always. It's like a thing with us. I've told you the story in the past, Jamarl, that the night before we invaded Iraq, I was the note taker in a principals committee video teleconference. It was chaired by Vice President Cheney. It had Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell and George Tenet and Tommy Franks and everybody that was going to be involved in the decision-making for the Iraq War. This is the night before we crossed the border into Iraq. And the senior director at the National Security Council said, when we cross that border tomorrow, they're going to throw flowers at us. He said that. with a lot of bobbing heads from people with, advanced degrees from Stanford and Harvard and Yale. And
I
I
really
said,
believe that though. He legitimately, because I am always in
these
this mindset of
neocons, the
they do
neocons,
believe this stuff.
they are true believers that we are the good guys and that everybody recognizes that. And I said to George afterwards, do these people know nothing about the Middle East? Do they know nothing about history? And he said, no, they know nothing. So, we always underestimate blowback and then we get bitten. Did we think that the Taliban were going to be able to hold us at bay for 20 years? Absolutely not.
No.
That the Iraqis were going to bog us down for 15 years, 18 years in a war? Absolutely not. But now they're thinking, you know what? We got screwed in Afghanistan. We got screwed in Iraq. We're still stuck in Somalia for all intents and purposes. Libya is a basket case. Maybe it's not such a good idea to invade Iran. And Donald Trump is a non-interventionist, kinda. So,
yeah, I mean, it's so unpredictable. Like
it is.
We can assume, okay, we can have these bombing runs and we can do this. We have no idea how bad their response will be. How many Americans are they going to kill? How many oil fields are they going to take down? How many, like, all of these things are consequences. And it's like there's a real world. The president will be holding that back at the end of that, in the middle of a trade war. And he's already started, right?
That's right.
And won another war.
And in any other period, you would have the support, let's say, of the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Bahrainis to attack Iran.
Right.
And we wouldn't have that support this time because they've been improving relations with Iran over the last 4 years. They've reestablished diplomatic relations. They've established new trade relations, and they don't want conflict in the Gulf. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense for them. So it's not just Netanyahu telling us, do it, do it, do it. It's all the Gulf Arabs saying, God, please don't do it. Please don't do it.
Okay, so the Saudi foreign minister, when he went to Iran, he's not telling him, hey, make a deal. And then going to Americans and saying something like it's consistent. You do believe
it's consistent. And I believe that the Saudi foreign minister's visit last week, in which he took 70 people with him, right? They were all working level experts. I think that was far more about a message to the Americans than it was a message to the Iranians.
Really?
And the message to the Americans was, we brought every governmental expert that we have to Iran because that's how deep our relations are going to become. So hands off.
Wow. Okay, so from your point of view, these are legit. These negotiations aren't a stalking horse. Trump is actually, I mean, I saw Witkoff's speech, like not speech, when he was on Sean Hannity.
Yeah.
And
I'm pleasantly surprised by him.
Same here. I mean, he sounded a lot like, I've said that I like Witkoff, and other people have bashed me for saying that. It's only, I don't even know the guy. It's just, he's not an ideologue in the way that
he's a pragmatist.
Yeah. And so when he goes,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. When he was appointed, I said out loud to a friend of mine, I said, not another billionaire. How many billionaires are we going to have? And if we've got, a Secretary of State, why is the Secretary of State not doing these negotiations? But I'll tell you why. Because Marco Rubio is a long-time and well-known neocon.
Right.
He's a Russia hawk. He's an Iran hawk. And you don't want a hawk in that position. You want a pragmatist who's going to be able to negotiate a deal.
Yep. And take Trump's point of view with him as he goes.
That's right.
Basically, you're my eyes and ears. You tell me what's going on. I don't want these people putting a knife in me like they did in my last administration. I'm choosing you to do it. That's the way I took it. And so far, that seems to be what he's done. When he went on Sean Hannity, he effectively said, yeah, in fact, he sounded a lot like the foreign minister for Iran, Arghachi. Both of them were saying the 3.6%, this is only about nuclear power. This is about nothing else. That was the way he effectively discussed it and explained it. And I was wow, these people are sounding very similar to each other. Maybe his flexibility in the negotiation.
Donald Trump is also a nut for oil, right? He loves fossil fuels. The Iranians are sitting on an ocean of oil. they can't lift much of it because it's hard for them to get spare parts.
Mm-hmm.
So the Russians provide some, they make some in-house, the Chinese provide some, but they're going to need a lifting of sanctions to really get back online like they were in the 1970s. And I mean, how much would Donald Trump love cheap oil, even if it were to be Iranian oil?
Oh, that's so interesting. Because from Trump's point of view, this lowers inflation, makes things cheaper. He loves, drill, baby, drill, all that stuff.
Exactly.
All that stuff in the
Exactly.
whole market. Wow, that's fascinating. One last point before I let you go. Hexeth, what do you make? Give me some context on. See, I'm conflicted. One of the things that Maloof talked about yesterday was conflicts in the CIA between the DoD and the CIA. That there was like a war going on between these two groups in regards to intelligence sharing, what they share, what they discuss, even competition in like their briefings of the presidents or briefings of other, let's say, senior officials that are in various administrations. Is that? I mean, I'm assuming it's true. Maloof was pretty strong about it. What is your experience with this? I mean, is this something that you've come across yourself?
Oh yeah, it's always been that way. There's always been an uneasy peace between DoD and the CIA. DoD has DIA, right, which is Defense Intelligence Agency, which is a component, of course, of the Pentagon.
Right.
They also have NSA, which is a component of the Pentagon, and that's why it's always headed by a 3-star general. But it's like, they work in these parallel worlds, but never the two shall meet. So if the Pentagon is doing a briefing, an intelligence briefing, it's going to include an order of battle briefing. The order of battle is always done by DIA, always. Okay. CIA has military analysts, but they're not going to brief order of battle. They may update the CIA leadership on order of battle, but they're not the primary briefers. That began to change with creation of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, because it took the CIA's primacy away. So the president's daily brief, which was exclusively a CIA product from 1947 to 2005, is now an ODNI product that anybody can contribute to. You don't have to be a CIA analyst. You can be DIA, state, NSA. You can be in Coast Guard intelligence. If you have something important enough that the president needs to see it, you can write it now. The CIA hates that. And it's resulted in some cross-contamination of intelligence authorities between CIA and DoD. It's kind of an uneasy piece, but Maloof is right. The CIA resents the fact that there are elements of DoD now that are sort of treading on their turf.
Interesting. That is so interesting. Oh man, that is so interesting. Yeah, he was saying it was bad, like especially during the Iraq War and leading up to the Iraq War.
Especially, I was still there, of course, during the Iraq War, and yeah, it was bad. Yes. I never understood why the CIA did order of battle briefings anyway. Do you know what an order of battle briefing is?
No.
It's you stand in front of a map and you say elements of the 1st Corps are moving in northeast, and then we've got elements of the 2nd Brigade of this division. Who cares? That's not analysis. That's just moving little puzzle pieces on a map. And DoD loves that stuff. But to me, it doesn't have any long-term intelligence value. It's where the enemy happens to have its troops at this given moment right now.
I see.
And DoD's good at that. That's what they do. They've got their satellites and they're watching the Iraqis move here, and then we move there, and then the Kuwaitis are here and the Saudis are there. And who cares?
That's a little weird for the CIA.
Yeah.
In their job description.
You get these nerds from the Directorate of Intelligence, and they just love this stuff. They just sit there with maps all day long and with their little puzzle pieces moving stuff around. I never understood the appeal.
One last thing. I got to hit you on the war in regards to Trump trying to negotiations with Russia. I've gotten very cynical about this. And the reason I've gotten cynical about it, Ted and I got into a back and forth on this, because it seems like, yes, they've been bashing Zelensky, trying to get him to fall in line on the issue of the Crimea. But the Russian red lines are red lines, or at the very least they seem to be. this notion, no NATO. Okay, well, how do you prove no NATO? How do you establish that Ukraine used to be neutral? They just tore it up. Like, how do you come to a deal that you just can't rip up like in a few years? There's that. The notion of the 4 territories plus the Crimea. Okay, those are red lines. Those things are part of the Russian constitution. And as I pointed out, Putin has vocally said this on more than one occasion, including to his public. And I know the United States believes Putin is God-man, and he's the only person that counts. Every power has a constituent power base that allows that guy to be in power, which means he has people that he has to at the very least deal with. He has a constituency that he has to answer to himself. He has a public that he has to deal with and answer to. It will be very hard to walk those back. Now, he has been very diplomatic, saying, hey, I'll talk to Zelensky under certain terms, knowing full well that Ukraine has a law forbidding him to do so. Or I forget the other one that he did yesterday where he was effectively, they're being very diplomatic. Trump is trying to get this deal immediately. And Russia's like, hey, why are we rushing? Why are we rushing? Now, part of this is we're winning on the battlefield. These guys are going to collapse at some point. We have nothing to rush. We need to talk this out. We don't entirely trust you because you've pulled out of Minsk, you've pulled out of the Istanbul agreements. So we want to talk first. And Trump's like, we got to get it done. We got to get it done. Give me your take on this. I mean, am I being too pessimistic in regards to there's a gap that it seems like an American president can't jump, that Europe is not going to accept, meaning they're not going to accept troops in Europe. I mean, in Ukraine, that's a red line. That's an obvious red line. Denazification. Okay, what does that even mean? Is that getting rid of Zelensky and pulling it out root and branch? How do you do that as an American president? Like, all of this stuff is fascinating, but there seems to be a gap. Give me your take on this. Where are you on this?
You'll remember that 2.5 years ago, we all said, all of us, when we were at Sputnik doing our radio shows, we all said that in the end, the Ukrainians are going to have to cede territory.
Yes.
We all knew what it was going to be. It was going to be the Donbass and Crimea, and that Zelensky was going to have to go. Mm-hmm. And now here we are 2.5 years later. And I think we've come to that point. If there's going to be an agreement, it's going to be an agreement that we saw leak from the White House 2 or 3 days ago, that Donbass and Crimea become Russian, that Zelensky steps aside and elections be held in Ukraine. I wouldn't be surprised if Zelensky ends up living in London 6 months from now.
Really?
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I don't think he can remain in Ukraine. He'll be a target, whether a target of Russians or even Ukrainians. And denazification is something that's a little bit more complicated because it's not like they carry membership cards, saying I'm a Nazi.
Yeah.
So that if the two sides are serious about that, I think there's going to have to be some sort of oversight, whether it's European Union or OECD or United Nations. Yeah, the Russians wouldn't accept that. They might accept UN oversight, but that doesn't have any teeth. So I have to agree with your earlier guest too that the Russians are winning, and while an agreement right now might be very nice, it's not absolutely necessary because all the Russians have to do is to keep doing what they're doing. And they'll end this thing on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, thank you for this. Oh man, I appreciate. I always
My
appreciate
pleasure.
These conversations.
Good
John
to talk
Kiriakou.
to you as always.
Oh, thanks, man. He is former CIA. John, are you still doing your show also at the same time as you're doing your events?
I've got a couple of things going on. I have a show with Ted Rall called Deprogram on YouTube. I have my own.
Fantastic, by the way. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, he's not an awesome guy. I've got my own interview show called Deep Focus, also on YouTube. That one's been shockingly popular so far. Good. And I've got a TV show on an online platform. The show's called CIA Declassified, and it's on Unified Television, UNIFYD. And everything I do, I put on Substack.
By the way, I've seen that show. You've done fantastic work on that.
Thank you. Thank you. We're in season 2, which is very exciting.
John, thank you for this, man. You be safe. Have a good one.
Take care.
You too. All right. Fantastic interview by